you please open us up in prayer? Just make sure the mic's on that.
There we go. Would you bow your heads with me, please? Well, Lord, we give you thanks. You are the giver of all good gifts, and you have made us men and women in your image, and there are special possibilities and gifts in our lives. We ask you to bless this meeting and to bless our township. May it be a place where cooperation and working together and accomplishing much good for all the people is noted in many places. We ask you to help us be a place not only of prosperity, but of brotherhood. We thank you for your inspiration. We ask you to guide conversation and planning, to give us wisdom. And as always, we ask you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much. I just wanted to say really quick, Trudy Hirschberger's not here tonight. She has the flu, so thank you, Trudy, for staying at home. Appreciate that. Okay. Okay, 2, approval of the agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda is submitted.
Okay.
Support.
Motion supported by Ms. Tinneberry. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Ms. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Hirschberger is excused, and Mr. Peroni.
Aye, and the motion is passed 6-0. Okay, number 3, consent agenda. The agenda committee reports. A, the committee recommends to the full board to approve and place on file the minutes of the January 16, 2018 regular meeting of the Bedford Township Board.
Move to approve the agenda as published.
Support. Moved and supported by Mr. Clemens. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll?
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Ms. Tinneberry?
Aye.
And Mr. Peroni.
Aye, and the motion is passed 6-0. Okay, number 4 is presentations. We have none tonight. And number 5 is public comment. Comments are limited to 2 minutes, and this is the time to comment on a board agenda item. So at this time, if you have anything you want to comment that's on the agenda, please come up.
Nate Allerton, Temperance, Michigan. I wanted to comment on your vote tonight in the old business to opt out of allowing a marijuana dispensary. I'm asking you to please opt out and let the state and the federal government decide this, and not allow the applications to be made in our town. First, I want to be clear that any person should never be denied the medical treatment prescribed by their physician, but I believe considering a dispensary or marijuana air would not add value to our community, and historically, these establishments don't help the community be better. They are not medically controlled, nor are they monitored by physicians. Consequences from these dispensaries and other communities that have them are drug dealing, possible sales to minors, loitering, increased traffic, noise, robberies, loss of businesses, dropping home values, which impact our school system. We see that traffic fatalities are up in states like Colorado that have legalized cannabis by drivers testing positive. So as a pastor, I deal with people all the time that struggle with addictions, struggle with opiates, heroin, cocaine, and a lot of people say this is not a gateway drug. Most of the time it is. All of these addicts did start their struggle in life with marijuana. I flat out asked men and women, and they said that they started down the path, and that was how they started. I'm tired of seeing lives with amazing potential destroyed and squandered for the sake of money. I'm tired of burying our young adults that have died of OD and standing with devastated parents and families. My little town of Morenci, Michigan passed this just several months ago, where I came from. In that little town of 1,500, they now have 3 dispensaries. I really doubt there are that many sick people that need it in that town. It would be wise for us to wait and opt out and force our federal government or state to pass laws that give oversight before we open a Pandora's box of potential trouble for our community and more heartache for families that are already struggling. Please protect our children, our next generation, and those that are more vulnerable. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any more comments?
Good evening, Logan Tisdale, 1308 Brandywine Street, Temperance, Michigan. According to statistics I have here on mlive.com, it says Monroe County has 26.1 patients, card holders per 1,000 residents, and that there's 644 card holders who are caregivers. I moved into Monroe County many years ago in 1982 as a police officer, and like I told the last time I was here, I said that I never really had a good encounter with people that were taking drugs, whether it would be marijuana or other kind of drugs. I guess I don't want to live next to someone that's handing out marijuana to people and stuff, and I have no idea who these people are. There's no regulation on them that I can see, and I would hope that the township would see that opting out would be the best way for this township to go. There are certainly plenty of caregivers in Monroe County to take care of people that are on medical marijuana cards. I have no problem with people to find ways of easing pain. We've all gone through pain in our lives. If you've had any surgery, you know what that's like. But I believe that because this is not regulated by any kind of agency, I don't know how you can control this. I'm afraid that this is going to get out of control, and Monroe County doesn't really need that anymore. So I would hope that Bedford Township would opt out of this. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Come on up. More comment?
Evening. My name's Dave Gaunt. I reside here in Temperance. I was wanting to talk to you about opting out of medical marijuana. Well, I'll just go ahead and read this to you. It's the easiest thing for me to do. In February 2017, the Town Focus article that was titled Clearing the Haze on Medical Marijuana states that there are negative aspects to consider. The Kalamazoo police chief stated that the most laws-abiding facilities can attract associated crime. California, their association for chiefs of
Hey,
police.
sir, can you pull your mic up to your face? You're too tall.
I'm sorry. I could speak louder, I guess. How's that?
That's it.
Good. The California Association for the Chief of Police found problems with patients illegally purchasing marijuana and then selling it to those who were not qualified as patients. In 2014, there was an impact study for medical marijuana in Colorado, and it revealed the following. Marijuana-related traffic fatalities had increased 100% from 2007 to 2012. Colorado youth ranked 4th in the nation for being current marijuana users. This is 39% higher than the average, national average. From 2008 to 2013, drug-related school suspensions, expulsions increased 32%. The vast majority was for marijuana. From 2012, 12 to 17-year-olds, students, marijuana usage increased 10%. This was 39% higher than the national average. In 2012, 27% of the college-age students, that's 18 to 25, were marijuana users. This is 40% higher than the national average. Marijuana exposed to children with the ages of 0 to 5 increased 268%. From 2008 to 2013, highway interdiction seizures of Colorado medical marijuana.
Hey, sir, just wrap it up. Your time's up.
Okay. Detained 48 states, it increased to 397%. Statistics continually show that there's an impact of having marijuana facilities. I ask you to opt out.
Thank you for your comments. Any more comments from the public? Okay, seeing none. Moving on to old business. 7A, request for approval of a revised agreement regarding easement and payment from Consumer Energy Company. Mr. Goldsmith?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I have reviewed this easement. I've reviewed the records maintained at the Register of Deeds office. This easement was recorded back in 1948, and the original easement describes the entirety of Jamie Park, which is part of the platted subdivision of Kimberly Oaks. So what Consumers Energy has asked us to do, as the township being the owner of the property, is to grant a new easement that would narrow the scope of the existing easement, and instead of being an easement over the entire parcel, which means that they could enter on the entire parcel and use it all for electric transmission purposes, to narrow the scope to 100 feet being 50 feet on either side of the current electronic transmission line. I met with the consumer's representative. We discussed it. I had a question for him relative to the scope of the current easement, because the platted subdivision shows a 36-foot easement. And if that were to be the case, then they're enlarging rather than narrowing the easement. But I could find no recorded instrument that, other than the plat, that stated this was anything other than a description of the entire parcel. So having reviewed it, having looked at the value of the property, I recommend to the board that you adopt this easement and otherwise approve it and sign it so that it can be recorded. It'll be used for electric transmission lines, and through this area, consumers intends to improve their lines. They're going to move the line too, which will benefit our residents at the outer boundary of the easement, where it was way too close to a couple of homes, which actually resulted in an electrocution. So a gentleman was cleaning a house, so they're correcting that problem as well in that general vicinity of Kimberly Oaks. So I recommend it.
Okay. Discussion from board members? Seeing none, I look for a motion.
Move we adopt or approve the agreement regarding the easement, Jackman number 1, Samaria number 29214126, as our attorney has reviewed it and recommends approval.
Okay. Support. We have a motion and support by Mr. Clemens. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
And Mr. Peroni.
Aye, and the motion is passed 6-0. Okay, item 7B, request for approval for an August 2018 ballot request for a 0.5 mil for 10-year levy for the Bedford Fire Department. Chief Massengill, Mr. Francis, if you want to take this one, come on up if we have any questions for you.
At our last meeting, we talked about this as it was recommended by the advisory board members that this board adopt a resolution to place on the August 2018 primary ballot an issue, and the issue is 0.5 mils for 10 years for the purchase of fire equipment, apparatus, vehicles, and other equipment and maintenance on those vehicles. There are two different alternatives. One alternative speaks what I just said it covered. The other one covers those plus building needs. We've talked about that. We can see some needs coming down the road. 2 of our 3 fire stations are over 70 years old and crumbling in front of our eyes, as all 70-year-plus buildings are. Adding the word "and building needs" would give us a little flexibility should something drastic happen. We have no intention of buying or building a new fire station out of that. It's just to cover large needs that might come up. There's been some discussion among board members, as you are aware, that maybe we ought to leave that off and restrict it only for equipment. I personally have no problem in doing that. I'd prefer the one with building in because it gives us a little more flexibility, but if it's the pleasure of the board to not include building, I have no problem. I think it's more important for us to get the millage passed that'll cover the large equipment and apparatus needs than it is to have a couple of words added that might help if we had a building need. If we run into a major problem with a building, we can address it then. We can either borrow some money for that short term if it need be, or fund it some other way. If that's what the board would desire, I have no problem at all in supporting that. You have in the packet tonight 2 different ballot proposals, pardon me. The first set is the ballot proposal that does not include the building needs. The second one does include the building needs phrase. So this board need to decide which one, if either one satisfies board members, which one we approve tonight.
Just real quick, I think, I spoke last meeting, I think it's important to keep millage as clear as you can possibly keep them in order for the public to not wonder about anything. And I think with the apparatuses and equipment, there's no wondering. You're replacing the equipment, period. The fire trucks and, you know, that could put thought in people's minds that, you know, you could take two of the $4.5 or $5 million and, you know, put up a new fire station or do whatever. The thought is there. There is no thought in replacing equipment, so that's my thought on it. Mr. Frederick, you had a?
Yeah, yes. At the last meeting, I asked the chief if he would provide to us a projected replacement year, the costs, the replacement age, and if you look at information A, he has provided that list of equipment and in the general order which he believes should be replaced. I have conducted a real non-scientific study, which means I had breakfast with a bunch of contractors, and I talked about this. Most of the contractors, in fact, almost every one of them simply said, we can support fire equipment, and I simply said, yeah, that's important because when they show up at your house, it better work, and they all agreed with that. But when I started talking about building, they said, well, wait a minute, you just built a new fire station over here in Lewis Avenue. Are you going to build another one? And they kind of backed away from the support of this particular millage. It is non-scientific. It is not a well-rounded group of citizens that you would test, but I thought I would report that with nine people in the morning. And my view is I would support the millage without the building improvements.
Any more discussion from board members? Do you have a question? Ms. Tinderberg?
Previously, I objected to the 10 years. I've not objected to the 0.5 mils. Tonight, I believe that the people have a right to decide. I really don't care which statement of support of the resolution we approve, actually, because it's up to this board to, before you do any building or meet any building needs, the board has to approve it anyway. So I have no comment on which one. It doesn't matter to me which one, but I do support the fact that the public has a right to make a determination. So I am in favor of one of these two. But I'd also like the minutes to reflect that I would ask that the board have a committee of the whole meeting to determine other millages that we've talked about and what the scheduling of that might be. I guess it's the same as Mr. Frederick's kind of study, but as people talk to me wherever I am, one of the concerns is, and it was brought to our attention by Mr. Janney at the last meeting, how many millages are you going to put before us, and are we going to have to decide which we think is the most important? And I think it's the leadership of this board to determine a scheduling of that, at least to meet in a committee of the whole meeting to have a discussion about that. So I would like the minutes to reflect not that whole long dialogue, but just that I'm suggesting that a committee of the whole meeting be held to determine future millages.
Okay. Any more, Mr. Francis?
You know, a scientific or non-scientific study that you did, Lamar, it does show that some are concerned with that issue, and that might be a stumbling block.
Yeah.
I guess I would rather eliminate the stumbling block because of the pressing need of the main item, which is the replacement of the equipment and apparatus that we will so desperately need. You know, three of our fire trucks are 25 years old plus, and it's hard to get parts for some of them. And I think that's the most important thing. So I guess with that in mind, if we're ready for motion, I'd like to make one.
And just on the whole, you know, we had a roof collapse at Temperance Road this last year. We had proposals up to $100,000. We did it with volunteers and got creative, and we did it for, what, about 8,000, 7,000? So, I mean, we have a lot of resources and ways to, you know, I'm not saying we can replace a building or anything like that, but, you know, we always have ways to do things and make them happen and be frugal and stuff, so go ahead, back to your motion, I'm sorry.
Well, I guess I would move that we approve the second ballot proposal that's in the packet tonight, the one that does not include building needs.
Okay, we have a motion.
I'll second.
Motion supported by Mr. Steiner. Discussion?
Just real quick, just a quick comment. You know, I agree too, that the building may be confusing if we have buildings in there. I mean, one part of me says, yes, we need things like that in there. I mean, you've got a fire truck that you can't even get into the temperance station because of the size of the doors. I think those are the kind of things that Mr. Francis said, that we can address those as a board if we had to expand in the, you know, the doors of a building or something like a small add-on to a building. But I think, and it was brought up, I think, the last meeting too, somebody mentioned how the library was supposed to be not a full rebuild, but it basically turned into a brand-new library. And I think that's what the citizens would probably see if we put buildings into this millage. And I think it's really appropriate that we stick with what we've got. And again, you've done a great job on the equipment and the list of the equipment that you've put a schedule together. And again, being that I've been around you guys some and plan to try to get to, you know, some more with you, I see what you guys need. And this is a good thing that we put something together to be able to support you purchasing new equipment down the road.
Thank you.
Mr. Perger?
Well, one last comment, and I think it's important. If we go through this 10-year period and the citizens approve it, we will be buying equipment over a 10-year period. The next 10 years should be relatively few issues with respect to purchasing further equipment. Now, that doesn't mean that, you know, 20 years from now, we'll be back here again. I won't be here. I'll be in the home. But the fire chief at that time will come back and say, my equipment now is 20-some years old, and we should be looking at replacing it. So it's a 10-year period, kind of a 10-year rest period. I think that's where we should go. We can tell our citizens that we'll have equipment when it gets to the site, it works. And that's the key. We owe that to the health, safety, and welfare of our citizens, and that's why I'm in strong support of this particular ballot issue. Thank you.
Any more discussion? Okay, we have a motion and support. Would you please call the roll?
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mrs. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
And Mr. Peroni.
Aye, and the motion is passed 6-0. Thank you, Chief, for being here. Okay, item 7C, request for approval of the resolution regarding medical marijuana facilities authorized by PA 281 of 2016. I just want to first of all say thank you to this board for taking your time. Every issue we deal with, to a certain extent, means a lot to somebody. And we don't take any issue lightly. This is something we've all been discussing and researching and looking into basically since we've all taken office. We kind of walked into this. So I said at the last meeting when we put this off for a while that I would do more homework. And I just want to read a few things that I have. First and foremost, I'm not against medical marijuana for people who are suffering from pain or seizures. I have talked with several people who are using it, looked at research, and it can help like other drugs do. First thing I was told first thing I did was hold a town hall meeting to help our residents become more familiar with the issues of medical marijuana and the new law. We had a doctor, prosecutor, township attorney, counselor, recovering addict, and Michigan Cannabis Development Association on the panel. Two, I have met with the Kevin Chang with Oasis Wellness and Wild Bill's Tobacco. They are pushing for recreational legislation, and they are involved with medical marijuana. Very insightful, and he expressed they would like to be in Bedford and open a dispensary. They have 75 locations in Michigan, Ohio, and are the 5th largest tobacco retailer in the country. They are pushing to have legalization and control it like alcohol on the ballot. I have a copy of the coalition right here to regulate marijuana initiative that they want to put on the ballot. I've met with Eric Babelis with Bedford Township Cannabis Development League. He provided me with our ordinance officer, and he provided me and our ordinance officer with very good information on why we should adopt an ordinance. I met with John Hindu, attorney, and Randy Richardville, representing several entities wanting to come to Bedford Township. Provided us with a report from Dr. Gary Wolfram, President, Hillsdale Policy Group, titled "The Economic Impact of a Strong Regulatory Framework for Medical Marijuana in Michigan." The report did say that it could create 10,000 potential jobs in the state of Michigan and the need for strong laws. Met with the attorney from the Cannabis Legal Group, Craig Aronoff, provided valuable information on what is going on nationally and locally. He suggested we wait until we see if it goes recreational. I spoke with several townships like Bangor that opted in. Spoke with Oakland Township. They are opting out and taking a wait-and-see approach because of what could be coming. I have had attorneys say take a wait-and-see approach on what happens if it becomes totally legal. Okay, so I have, I've tell kind of everybody this that comes in the office. We have 3 issues. We have the one from 2008. The problem with the current law is not well regulated, inspected, or taxed like it should be. We get calls and complaints every other week with odors, traffic going on, within homes in the evenings, and we don't know where they're at. We don't know what's going on, and it's just, to be quite honest with you, it's kind of a mess. So we need to look at that, and we're working diligently with our township attorney and our ordinance officers to clean it up and to do what we think should be done with that. The second is what we're talking about tonight, is the 5, the new set of laws that is trying to, it's the 5 facilities. If we opt into that, we don't know what comes from that, to be quite honest with you. There's a lot of unknowns with it. And then you have 3. In November, if it becomes totally legal, we don't know what comes from that. So the last thing this board would want to do is put this township in a jam for any unknowns. At this time, I think we should take a wait-and-see attitude, watch what other communities are doing, and see if it passes for recreational use. If Bedford is ever going to do this, it needs to be done right. Like I said, there's a ton of stuff going on with it. We've all done our homework, and to get it to this point. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to add, Mr. Steiner?
I was pretty vocal about this the last time we discussed it, and just real quick to the point what I heard tonight, one of the big things is I said too, we don't know what the federal and the state laws are going to be. I certainly wouldn't want to opt into something that we have no idea what the law is going to do. So it's like, again, it's the cart before the horse in that scenario. Mr. Peroni, thank you for sharing. Obviously, you had pro and con in your contacts, which is good to show that we've looked at both sides of the issue.
Here's my packet.
Yeah.
Mr. Pryor has helped me a lot with this, but this is all the information we've gathered.
Mine's thicker than yours.
No, mine, no, it's not. I've seen your packet.
Lamar, that's thicker because you've had more years to gather. Wisdom, my friend. Again, I too said before, and I'll say it again, I don't have a problem with medicine and medicinal marijuana when it's used properly and regulated properly. That's the whole key, is regulated properly. So I'll shorten it there, and I'll just say that I currently am not for opting in. And one thing that everybody can remember, if we were to opt in today and businesses started to break ground or do whatever, it's there forever. If we opt out today and down the road, there's a change, maybe there's some regulations out there by the state and the feds that do make sense, then we could always opt in at that time. We can't go there and take it back, but we can wait and go there if we decide down the road.
Okay. Ms. Tineberry? Mr. Fredericks had his
No,
hand
go
up
ahead.
first.
Okay.
Good. Okay, Ms. Tineberry, go ahead.
Well, I've always been the wait-and-see kind of person, but personally, I would like to move, we have this resolution drawn up. As Mr. Steiner said, we can, follow the resolution, opt out, and anytime in the future, we can opt back in. I'm not in favor of the wait-and-see any longer, and I would say maybe the main reason is that mine, as well as everyone else's on this board, because I see the little 2 thing at the top of the email, but my email has been inundated with all kinds of information that is slanted in one direction and in some cases just absolutely false. And I want to put an end to that, so I am in favor of opting out tonight.
Okay. Mr. Frederick?
We just, in the hour preceding this meeting, we had the Michigan State Police here, Tressa Duffin, who talked about human trafficking. It was a wonderful presentation. I hope the people at home had an opportunity to look at it. One of the issues that she noted is that drug addiction can lead to human trafficking. Pastor Ellerton noted that gateway drug is in fact marijuana. Now, I think all of us are in the position to say that with respect to medical uses, if you have the medical card and you go to a licensed caregiver, we know how that works generally, but we don't know about the underground. We've all talked about delaying and see how this all works going down the road, and I support that. So, Mr. Supervisor, with your permission, I move the resolution regarding the medical marijuana facilities in which Bedford Township declines to adopt an ordinance authorizing any of the 5 types of medical marijuana facilities within Bedford Township as authorized by PA 281 of 2016, and that by adoption of this, an ordinance authorizing any of the types, a marijuana facility shall not operate in Bedford Township. That's my motion.
Support.
Who wants it?
Take it, Paul.
Okay, we have a motion and support by Mr. Francis. Discussion? Mr. Francis?
It troubles me that the state is going to all this bother when it's still against federal law. And the last time I checked, federal law supersedes state laws. That's an issue that needs to be addressed. It'll come, I'm sure, but why on earth would any township want to put themselves in a spot where they're, in effect, condoning something that's against federal law? So there's too many open items on this whole issue to make an informed decision. So I think the proper thing to do would be to opt out at this time. And the other comment I have is we had some meetings where the folks that were, I guess, lobbying us to approve something like this, to allow those facilities to locate in Bedford, only concentrated on, well, how can you possibly deny the poor folks with pain that have medical marijuana needs? People aren't coming into states like Michigan and other states throughout the country and putting up large facilities to provide medical marijuana use only. They're investing that kind of money in other resources with the probably approval coming at some point for recreational use. That's what it's really all about. It's all about the money. Now, they denied that, but you're never going to convince me that it's not about the money. So I'll get off my horse.
Mr. Steiner?
Just one last comment. At one point, there was discussion of should we do a survey or something like that, and to Ms. Tinvery's point, yes, our email boxes have been inundated with a lot of emails. Some information may be factual, some slanted, but away from the proponents of medical marijuana, the ones really pushing it in the different groups out throughout the state, I would say, again, not scientific, as Mr. Frederick said, probably 98 to 99% of every email that I got on the subject said, do not put it in my township. Other than that, I counted all those, and the only ones that said put it in the township were the ones that were actually pushing for business. So I did not have one resident, I take that back, I did have one that wanted it. Everybody else said no.
Well, I watched one individual on Facebook in total support of all this, and I believe she tried to get a hold of you, and I ended up talking to her. But after I explained the 3 issues that we could face, she was like, you guys are making the right decision. I mean, she totally turned around after she heard what we're up against. So, Ms. Tinderberry, do you have something?
Yeah, in light of that, correct me if I'm wrong, but we are not denying medical marijuana users that have prescriptions and have a caregiver, and that's all taking place.
Since 2008.
So, okay, so just to be clear to everyone that, you know, what actually several people have said, we understand the people who need it medically and who have a legal right to get it medically. This has nothing to do with that.
Correct. You have caregivers here already in Bedford Township.
Right, right.
Any more discussion?
What this does is it denies the opportunity to build the facilities in the township,
Right.
period.
That's right. Okay, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mrs. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
And Mr. Peroni.
Aye, and the motion is passed 6-0. Okay, new business. 8A, request for approval of vouchers for payment. Mr. Francis?
In the absence of our clerk, Ms. Hirschberger, I'd like to make, excuse me, a motion to approve the following vouchers for payment. From the general fund, a total of $95,958.14. From the fire district fund, $30,019.26. From the police millage fund, $1,222.99. From the park fund, $1,090.38. From the transit system fund, $18,102.50. From the library fund, $5,603.58. From the economic development fund, $325. From the water revenue fund, $7,000. From the Mohawk Trail Special Assessment District, $416.50. From the Downtown Development Authority Fund, $181,250. From the Sewer O&M Fund, Operating and Maintenance Fund, $79,451.67. And from the Trust and Agency Fund, $3,252.80, for a grand total of $423,692.82.
We have a motion,
Second.
supported by Mr. Steiner. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mrs. Tinnevery?
Aye.
And Mr. Peroni.
Aye, and the motion is passed 6-0. Item 8B, request for approval of the Monroe County Road Commission Road Improvement Contract for the Indian Acres Special Assessment District. Mr. Francis.
I guess it's me again. This is approving a contract with the Road Commission for the Special Assessment District in Indian Acres. It covers a length of 1.59 miles, and a brief description of what it is. It's a hot mix asphalt paving, earth excavation, aggregate base, storm sewers, drainage issues, aggregate shoulders, and slope restoration in the Indian Road, Apache Trail, Fur Drive, Seneca Drive, and Navajo Drive. The total amount of the contract is $883,800, of which the township's portion is $836,000 even, and the road commission is contributing $47,800. So I guess I move that we approve the contract with the road commission.
Ms. Tinnevery.
I support that, but I have a question.
Motion supported by Ms. Tinnevery. Discussion, Ms. Tinnevery.
On the back of the Monroe County Road Commission was the Manikin-Smith agreement. Have we approved that? Because shouldn't that be approved first since it's part of the total agreement?
Larry, you want to come on up?
Or is this agreement between Manikin-Smith and the Road Commission?
It's listed with it.
Okay, forget that then. It's just, okay, you just show, okay. I
Good
just
question.
thought-
Okay, motion is supported. Discussion. Any more discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mrs. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
And Mr. Peroni.
Aye, and the motion is passed 6-0. Item 8C, request for approval of the Monroe County Road Commission Road Improvement Contract for the Mohawk Trail Special Assessment District. Mr. Francis.
Okay, this is for Mohawk Trails. The length of it is .90 miles, so it's just short of a mile. A brief description of what it is: it's a hot mixed asphalt base, crushing, shaping and resurfacing, trenching, aggregate base, and shoulders, drainage, storm sewers, and restoration on Mohawk Trail Drive, Comanche Trail, Pawnee Trail, did I read that right? Yeah, Pawnee Trail, and Miami Court. And
Seminole.
can't hardly read that.
Seminole.
Is that what it's- And Seminole Trail. The total of the contract is $482,400, of which the township share is $476,100, and the road commission is contributing $6,300. I guess I move that we approve this special assessment district contract with the road commission as presented.
Support.
We have a motion supported by Ms. Tinnevery. Discussion.
Yeah, I have
Ms. Tinnevery.
I just have a question of Mr. Francis. Is both of these will be levied on the 2018 taxes?
Yes.
Okay, since they've been approved before. I'd like the minutes to reflect that because people ask.
Okay. Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Ms. Tinnevery?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
And Mr. Peroni.
Aye, and the motion is passed 6-0. Okay, 8D, request for approval of the resolution supporting a complete streets policy. Mr. Francis, but I'm going to call Mr. Bushman up too in case we have any questions.
We are applying for a TAP grant through SEMICOG, and when we apply for that, having a complete streets policy adopted by the township would enhance our chances of receiving a grant like that. This is something that was discussed when our master plan was adopted couple of years ago, but we never followed through with an actual statement or a resolution to support the complete streets. That's what this is tonight. It's a resolution to support a complete streets policy. So Mr. Bushman, I'm sure, can explain it better than I can, but that's in essence what this is.
Right. Well, I think you stated it quite well and completely. Essentially, complete streets, and I'll read from a section of the proposed resolution. Complete streets are defined in Public Act 135 as roadways planned, designed, and constructed to enable the safe and convenient access for transportation users for all ages, abilities, including pedestrians, bicyclists, transit riders, and motor vehicle drivers. So essentially, what it requires us to do is look at the streets from a complete aspect, not just from the drivers driving down the streets, but it also looks at how we would look at for pedestrians, bicyclists, non-motorized transportation, as well as other type of freight and other transit too. So we look holistically at each road as we go through any new design or rehabilitation program.
Barry, I just want to say thanks for being here. I didn't even know you were going to be here tonight, but that's something good about having a local township engineer. He's just in the
Well, I
audience.
knew Trudy wasn't going to make it tonight, so I thought.
Oh, okay, all right, well, you had it going.
So,
No, I appreciate it.
yes.
You guys do a
Sure.
great job, and everything's always,
What is this, the Mutual Admiration Society?
what do you want me, I'm giving him a compliment.
Especially when he comes in for free.
Yeah. Thanks, Rick.
Any questions?
Just remember, before you heap all those accolades on him, the guy is an Ohio State fan. But his wife counterbalances that because she's a Michigan fan. Is
That's
that
true.
correct? Okay.
Everybody has a defect somewhere, yeah.
Hey,
Always have to be the downer, don't you?
Great.
seeing no discussion, I look for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move that we adopt the resolution supporting complete streets policy as presented.
Support.
Okay, motion is supported by Mr. Clemens. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mrs. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
And Mr. Peroni.
Aye, and the motion's passed 6-0. Thank you,
Thank
Barry.
you.
Okay. 8E, request for approval to accept the bid for the 2008 Ford Crown Victoria vehicle. Mr. Francis?
In the packet, excuse me, on the second page are the minutes from the bid opening event, which took place at 9:15 a.m. on Tuesday, January 30th, 2018. There was only one bid that was received, and he is identified in the packet, and the bid price was $2,000. Only one of the two vehicles that were advertised for sale were bid on, and it's this one. So I guess I move that we accept that bid from Harold
Adeline.
Adeline in the amount of $2,000 for the sale of a 2008 Crown Vic.
Support.
Motion supported, discussion. I just want to say, with the second vehicle, that we'll be doing the same process again, to give another opportunity for more people to see it. I think $2,000 is a fair price for the vehicle. I've personally driven it myself. You know, before we put it up for sale, we took off, swapped the tires around because there were better tires on there. But the vehicle's in rough shape. You know, it's not, you know, it's not in poor shape, but it's, you know, I think it's a fair price. Ms. Tinneberry?
Interestingly, the two are exactly the same except for the mileage. Which one are we selling?
I think it's the one with the 141.
Yeah, it's the one with the more miles.
More miles?
I think
Okay.
it's 138, but it could have been.
133 is the other one, and then 141 is the,
The 141.
okay. Thanks.
Any more discussion? Yeah, it's 141, yeah. Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
From the website.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mrs. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
And Mr. Peroni.
Aye, and the motion is passed 6-0. Okay, up next, 8F, request for approval to disband the Veterans Committee. Tim Fitzgerald and Al Pryor, if you guys want to come on up. This has been a committee that I personally think has done some really cool things. But as Tim's going to explain, this committee got to a point to where it wanted to do more. And really, it was held back from a lot of what they thought were some immediate needs, like a set of dishwasher or a vehicle or somebody's roof. The township cannot do those sorts of things. And they wanted to expand in a whole lot more. So it came to the point where it's like, you know, they're doing, they started this separate 501c3 to where they could do those things. And they're really doing a lot of neat things. So I'll give you guys the mic and kind of explain how we've gotten to this point and kind of, you know, give us the beginning.
Well, I mean, the beginning, everybody was here for. You know, we started a committee to try to do something different for this township, and we have succeeded beyond measure. But, you know, like you said, it just got to a point where, you know, the laws and the rules of a township committee are kind of in direct, they don't go along with what we actually need to do. You know, we can only give recommendations to this board, and if I tried to call a meeting every time I needed to get something done, you'd all hate me. So we created a 501c3 where we can act. You know, if I get a telephone call where, you know, they're out of diapers or they're out of gas, they're on the side of the road, I can act immediately. And we've done a really great job, and, you know, we'll be having our grand opening over at the Veterans Center here real soon. Hope everybody comes out and supports it.
I think the other thing too is Tim's got to give him, we got to give you some kudos and credit, because you took a building and Abe Haruk took that old post office and put a new roof on it, put windows on it and so on, and he offered it to the vets. And instead of having an eyesore in downtown Temperance, we actually have a nice building when you drive by there. So credit to Tim and his perseverance and so on. And I just see nothing but good coming from this. And I probably should have taken, I did learn something from you, Nancy. When you said sometimes townships just can't do it all. But I think we had to learn that. And I think that was important, especially for the Veterans Committee, because we were kind of in that quandary of, like, if somebody walks through the front door, wow, we can't help him. We can refer him, but he needs help, like, right now. And Tim's been able to do that. He's already provided food. We delivered washer and dryer. He's fixed cars. He's doing things like right now, which has never really been done in this township. So that's why we see a lot of good things coming, and hope that everybody will support the Bedford Veterans Center over there on Temperance Road.
Ms. Tinnever?
Well, I totally understand why you need a 501c3, but is there a reason why the Veterans Committee has to be disbanded? It may not serve all your needs as you need, but couldn't it be a support for your organization? Couldn't we help with fundraisers or, you know, whatever, parades or?
Let me answer that question. Down the road, not too far, I would probably end up being a liaison to them.
What?
I'll
You
be
will?
able to help out
Oh.
within here. There is some confusion with the Township Veterans Committee and the Township Veterans 501c3. We want to make sure that people know what they're doing and who they're giving to and why we're doing certain things. That way there's, you know, we just don't want confusion.
So does your can I finish?
Yeah.
Okay. Does your 501c3 have a board?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so you will be publicizing those people, that we can contact them then if we want to?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
Okay,
we'll take the money.
where's that publication?
Tim will take the money.
I'm thinking of giving my brain, not the money, no.
Well, did you have the
You said
grand
you
opening
learned something.
set? Or there's going to be a grand opening. And
Working on the grand
Right.
opening is actually tomorrow.
Okay. Oh, I'll be on it.
Any more questions, Mr. Fredericks?
Well, I talked to you about this a couple of weeks ago, and you were going to keep it going, and
You talked some sense into me.
I talked some sense, but actually what I'm concerned about is the confusion between his good work, the Temperance Veterans Committee, wherever they are, and having a township committee at the same time. I'm concerned about confusion, fraud, and nobody's going to do that, but we want to make sure that there's a clean separation. Now, if 6 months, 8 months, 10 months, we want to do something different, then we can move forward. But I agree with you, this should be disbanded, and we should thank all of the people who did serve.
Well, and you never, when you start something, you never know what it's gonna totally end up. And it came to this, and I'm 100% for it. We have veterans getting their needs met. You know, let's just say something happens and they go away in 2 years, we can always reform a new Veterans Committee. But, you know, they're doing an amazing job, and, you know, I don't want government to get in their way. So, I'm all for it. Any more discussion? Okay. Thank you very much for being here. As soon as you walk away, somebody's gonna have a question, though. Okay, I look for a motion. Mr. Frederick?
I move that we disband the Township Veterans Committee and that we thank all of those who have served during this time and for their good work. Thank you.
Support.
Okay, motion supported by Mr. Clemens. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Frederick?
Yes. Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mrs. Tinneberry?
Aye.
And Mr. Peroni.
Aye, and the motion passed 6-0. Okay, 8G, request for approval to scrap the wrecked Ford Explorer police vehicle. This is the vehicle that was wrecked, gosh, what, Mr. Steiner, 8 months ago or 6 months ago or something like
Probably
that?
6 to 8 months ago.
Well, in that time, we were able to buy it back for a minimal amount, and I thought it was a great idea to buy it back because there was a lot of good parts on it. Tires, rims. We actually used a rim, which saved a few $100s. The tires are still in good shape. We've taken the lights, panels, basically stripped it down, and we're storing all the parts at Lewis Avenue Auto Shop off Lewis Avenue. But the reason this got spurred was because where it was being stored for free, they wanted out of there. I think storage was an issue, so we have no reason to keep it, you know, other than we were using it for parts. So we're definitely gonna get our money back out of what we paid to buy it back, which I don't have a number on that. I think it was around $600 or $500 or something like that. But, so yeah, we just, you know, we don't wanna pay storage fees on it, on keeping it somewhere, because that'll end up adding up. When the car was wrecked, we actually got roughly, we got the whole buyback. We got, I think around, because we had the insurance, or was that for the fire department's vehicle where we got the full amount back to buy a new vehicle? Either way, this car was wrecked. We got paid by insurance, and you always have an option to buy it back. Well, we bought it back, and we kept it. The reason we kept it was for parts for other vehicles, because a lot of the stuff will match up because we have Explorers right now, so now there's no need to keep it. Ms. Tinneberry?
So we bought it back from the insurance company? Mm-hmm. Oh, I didn't know they took, okay. And how did it get wrecked? Was that at a board meeting? I missed that. Maybe I wasn't here, but.
It was during a attempted traffic stop. An officer had an accident with an oncoming vehicle.
I don't think it came before this board.
In Bedford, did it happen?
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
Stearns Road.
Yep. Any more discussion, questions?
Have all the saleable parts been removed, or just the ones we thought we could use for other vehicles, or what?
I had the guys over at Lewis Avenue Auto tell me what was salvageable off of it and what we could use for our vehicles. Is there something else on there we could probably rip off and try to sell on eBay, you know, I mean, probably, alternator, whatever, whatnot, you know what I mean, but, to be quite honest with you, it's useless to us. But a scrapyard will probably, you know, we'll have to pay $70 to get it towed, we'll probably end up getting a couple $100s for the vehicle. Mr. Steiner?
That was my question, is where
Yeah, we'll
we're
get
scrap
paid.
it to, and
Yeah, I'm trying to get somebody local, I think, actually, I think, the Lewis Avenue is gonna take it to their scrapyard.
you're
or
not gonna
whatever.
get anything from metal right now, so.
Yeah.
not at least
I
like
think
that.
typically you get around a couple $100 for cars, 250 or something.
But
so,
that's got nothing to it. Like, see, if you took the rims, you took the wheels, you took a lot of stuff,
yeah.
so.
I look for a motion. Mr. Steiner?
I make a motion to approve the scrapping of the wrecked Ford Explorer police vehicle, which was a 2013 Ford Explorer, as presented.
Support.
Motion, supported by Mr. Clemmons. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Clemmons?
Aye.
Mr. Francis?
Aye.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mrs. Tinneberry?
Aye.
And Mr. Peroni.
Aye, and the motion passed 6-0. Item 8H, seasonal employees for discussion. Ms. Tinneberry?
Well, my memo basically says it all. I'm just interested in the board determining, I brought my personnel policy tonight in case there's any questions, but there's a listing of part-time employees, a listing of seasonal and part-time temporary office employees, and whereas it explains in one part, seasonal employees will be selected by the township supervisor, clerk, and treasurer, it doesn't really designate a season or how they're, how they're paid, who, it says supervisor, clerk, and treasurer, but does that mean all three determine a seasonal employee for the supervisor's department? It's just, to me, incomplete in its definition, and I would like to have a discussion, other than just me, on the subject.
Well, I'll speak from my end. I will say I've been in the job for a little over a year, and there's not one time where I can't give myself enough time or enough notice to bring something to the board to ask permission to hire a seasonal employee and explain to you why. The reason I do the way we do it's because of what we do with seasonal employees at this point. If you need somebody seasonal, you hire them.
What is seasonal? What is the season?
Well, season for me would be summertime help, cleaning up leaves, the extra help the maintenance guys need. Seasonal for me is right now the snow plowing season. Then we don't need them after snow, so they're gone, and we'll have to, rehire them again. That's seasonal for me.
So is there a reason you couldn't come at a board meeting, just make the statement, I hired 3 seasonal employees for January through February? I mean,
Are you
Is
asking
it-
that this board, the policy be changed to where I would have to come to the board to ask permission to hire seasonal, or just let you know that I'm hiring a seasonal?
I'm not asking to change the policy. Unless the board decides to change the policy, I'm asking for a definition. When you say seasonal, is that of a season? I mean, I understand the season for the clerk's department in terms of election help. I understand that. I understand the season for the treasurer's department in terms of tax collection. But what is, right now, there's no season, but we have seasonal employees. I'm just asking for a definition and for this board to determine how that is going to be handled. And yes, I would, at the least, ask for a comment from whichever department is hiring seasonal help that, we hired so-and-so for seasonal, they're going to be here from this term to that, for this date to that date. I get the impression, and I correct me if I'm wrong, but seasonal help comes in and doesn't leave. And so then it becomes part-time, I would think. So I'm just asking that we have a delineation of season and just a courtesy of explanation that someone new is in there in the township office, so that when a board member comes in, we see a new face. And I mean, if that's too much to ask, then okay, it'll be left as it is.
Mr. Steiner?
So in other words, you're asking for a glossary or an index or whatever. I mean, like you said, summer, it's leaves, grass, et cetera. Winter, And maybe even, if you have to have some play, but define the months. So what is considered summer months? Here's the duties under summer seasonal. What are the projected winter months? Here's the duties under seasonal. Is that what you're looking for?
Something with that, like that would be, I mean, I think the board needs to decide. It's just, I'm just giving you my perspective.
Well, I'm just saying, but that's the kind of information I
that's
think you're
right,
looking for.
right.
Not necessarily a decision, but the information.
And from reading your memo, I would assume that a begin and an end date is also something you're wanting to look at as well.
I would think for seasonal employees, part-time employees, in my mind, my frame of thinking, part-time is different, but for seasonal, just the word, to me, defines a beginning and an end.
Yeah. When I read it, I kept thinking in my head, these are really project employees. They're hired for a specific, or should be hired for a specific task, and that task is either concluded or it needs to be extended, but there is an accountability component to that I do think there's something missing there.
Well, I think where this is probably coming from is we have one seasonal person that's been around for a while now. She's gone from the clerk's department, and now she's in the treasurer's department. And, so I mean, I don't know why. And like you're saying, that you'd like to know some sort of explanation. She's probably in the treasurer's department for taxes right now.
That's correct.
And she was in the clerk's department for elections. And I think there's been a few vacations to where she's filled in. So I mean, I don't know why, when did she start?
Well, during the last election.
Last election?
Yeah.
So it's been on and off
Yeah,
since I've been there.
She doesn't work every day, all the hours. She just comes in as needed.
So for somebody like that, who's a floater, or, I don't know how you'd really, you know what I mean?
Well, I mean, I've said before many times, I totally believe in cross-training. I have no objection to someone, working in one department and then being, okay, we don't need her anymore, do you need her? Yeah, we can. So, I mean, I don't object to a floater, but that it shouldn't be defined under seasonal employee. I mean, I think
Well,
you
if
can.
yeah, but if this board
water it
decided,
down.
if it was brought to this board to put our seasonal person on full-time, or not full-time, but part-time, then we have to vote to let that position go.
And you have a problem with the board deciding, or?
Well, I know, I mean, I think it's been up to their department to say, hey, we need her, or we don't. And she kind of, sometimes she's there, I don't know, I mean, I don't know when she's there, but like my people, my seasonal people, it's, every year we hire them in the spring, and we typically have 3, and they go till fall. That's typically when it's been defined, from spring to fall, and then, we just started this new deal with the snow plowing, so we're gonna every year have, seasonal people for snow. But yes, mine will come and go. Every year we have new seasonal people, because typically they're high school kids.
So how does the
Francis?
seasonal, excuse me,
Oh, go ahead.
well, just, you brought up a question, so how does the seasonal people for snow, when we don't get snow, are they paid because they're seasonal?
No,
So
they only work when
they're on call.
They're on call, yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Francis?
We've had seasonal employees here for a long time. Has there ever been a problem before? Seems like we're arguing about semantics.
I am not arguing. I
Well,
just raised a question for
Okay,
discussion.
we're talking about semantics. Why does it have to be a definite written description of every possibility that we could use, quote, seasonal employees? It's busy season in my mind. When you need the person, you need the person during that period of time. I just can't see where this is an issue. We spend a lot of board time on the policy. It was in the policy manual, which was revised last on February 7th, 2008.
Mr. Fredericks?
It seems to me that there's 2 possible ways to handle this. One, with respect to the summer employees that are hired as employees without benefits. I mean, I'm a little bit concerned about making sure that we properly classify the summer employees and that we properly classify your snowplow people. And one reason I say that is because we should be concerned about workers' comp and unemployment and a number of other issues that are quite important. But with respect to the summer group, as you've properly stated, they're here from whenever the kids get out of school, if that's what you hire, not, and you used to hire at least one person who wasn't a school person. And I would suggest that when you do that, you send a letter to the board. Here's what I have done, and we can either ratify it or not ratify it. That's quite simple.
So we need a policy change.
And we need, some kind of written policy that says that's what you'll do every spring. You just tell us who you've hired because you're going to interview them. We're not going to interview them. And generally speaking, they'd be on from June something to whenever they go back to college if they do. You can just send us a note for that, and we can either ratify it or we can do something different. With respect to your snowplow people, are they employees or intended to be employees, or are they independent contractors? I think
They're employees.
then we need to make sure that we have properly classified them and that we have properly told our insurance company what these people are doing. And as employees, they are covered by our insurance policies, and as employees, I'll pass it over to Phil, they're entitled to workers' comp and or unemployment insurance or whatever. So I think we need to just have a letter from you or any other section head that says, here's what I've done. In that way, one, you've already told the public, two, you've told us, and three, unless there's some issue that we don't know about, that would probably be approved. That's my suggestion.
Ms. Tedder, you like that suggestion?
That's fine. I mean, again, I brought the issue up just for a discussion. I'm sorry that some people think it's an argument, but I believe that as a trustee and part of the fiduciary responsibility is to know what's being paid out in terms of employees and seasonal and so, and to me, it's a courtesy to be able to walk into the township and say, hello, so-and-so, welcome aboard, glad you're here for the season. I mean, walking in and seeing a strange face I've never seen before and having to ask someone, who is this, to me just is just not very courteous.
Mr.
Maybe.
Frederick?
One last comment. Why don't we forget this seasonal employee stuff and call them temporary employees, because that's what they are. That way, we're not talking about whether they're here in the spring, they're here in the fall, they're here in the winter. They're temporary employees, and that's what they are. Now, they're temporary employees with benefits, temporary employees without benefits, or whatever combination you as the department heads decide to do. And so now, forget seasonal employees, they're temporary employees, and they're here for some particular period of time, if that's known, or they're here for some particular reason. That seems to me that's an easy way to take care of. Forget seasonal, and we'll just call them temporary.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm fine with whatever. I just want to make sure whatever we talk about
Yeah.
gets put in a policy. That way, in 5 years, a whole new group of people could follow the policy.
Well, again, if you call them temporary employees, you know what you're doing. It seems to me. That's my thought. That's my thought. I mean, when we were, I go back to when I was, working for the corporation, we called everybody a temporary employee if they weren't a full-time employee. So I don't know, Mr. Steiner, you can tell me what your company does.
Pretty much the same thing. I mean, it's either, we use a lot of, interns and stuff like that, but they are temporary employees.
Okay, Mr. Francis?
So then we are talking about a policy change, because it's defined in the policy of what it is.
That's what I'm saying. Whatever we do has to be
The
a policy
policy
change.
for defining what they are is our personnel manual. It's section 3.1.4 that it says, seasonal and part-time temporary office employees are those persons who are hired for a specific type of specific type of seasonal work or temporary office work. That's the definition of both of them.
Oh,
And
I'm sorry.
might be confusing.
I think that we can clean up that language in about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And so, again, there's a good starting point. This section, we simply say, and I'm just really crafting words for a moment, a temporary employee shall be for a period certain or to do a particular job.
The other thing that I saw as a possible change is you said notify the board and they can say yes or no. What if they say no?
Well, then,
Because the
Go on.
policy leaves that up to specific individuals to make that appointment, if you will, as a seasonal or part-time person.
then let's look at
So we
this.
gotta, if you're gonna make that change, we've got some wording to work on, not just a off-the-cuff vote tonight.
I'm not suggesting off the cuff. I'm suggesting that you brought up a particular point that we need to look at and work on. Thank you.
I have no problem with that.
Okay. Ms. Tenenberry, did you have anything else?
I was going to use that, exactly what Mr. Francis read, that seasonal and part-time temporary office employees, they lump it all together, but yet they aren't all lumped together. They're, at least the seasonal and part-time at this point are two separate types, but it's confusing because it is lumped together. And how do you determine part-time and how do you determine seasonal or temporary? Believe me, I didn't expect anything to be decided tonight. I just thought that this needed to be something that is discussed.
I have no problem with that at all.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. That's good information. Mr. Fredericks?
Just convene the personnel group, whoever it is, personnel committee, and have them work on it.
Who is the personnel committee?
Well, we have a group that we've been getting together, our board.
3 full-time people.
I believe it needs to have a trustee on the personnel committee because the trustees are also responsible for the personnel.
Okay, number 9, comments from the public. Comments limited to 5 minutes for each individual. Come on up.
Nate Allerton, Temperance. I've lived here for 21 years, and many times living here, raising my kids, I've been proud to be a citizen of Bedford Township and proud of my township, and I would be amiss to say that this isn't one of those times. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments. Any more comments?
Good evening, Logan Tisdale, 1308 Brandywine Street. For your information, I attempted to obtain a copy of the Monroe County Sheriff's Contract Service Summaries for the entire year of 2016 via the Freedom of Information Act, but was told that these reports are informational and are not required to be kept on file. I request that this board adopt a resolution or mandate requiring that these important documents be kept on file at the Township Clerk's Office for a period of 5 years plus the current year. The only ones that were available to me were for the past year of 2017. These records need to be kept as hard copies and not just placed on the township website, which did not include 2016 records. They represent a huge amount of tax dollars and need to be available to anyone interested in how our tax dollars are being spent and what we are receiving for these monies. These reports should not be a footnote on the agenda or considered as purely informational and are an important part of the township business. If I can keep important records about my personal life for 20-plus years, then this should be a piece of cake for the township. Secondly, up-to-date and serviceable fire equipment needs to be a top priority for this township. It goes without saying that this equipment protects the lives of our volunteer firefighters and the lives of our citizens. I pay very little taxes for public safety via millage in this township, whether for fire or police protection. It is almost lopsided what we pay for taxes in this community. Just look at the last tax bill and see how our tax dollars are being dispersed. Very little goes to protect over 30,000 citizens that reside in this growing community. If the community college can increase their revenues by a new millage, then the citizens of this township should be quick to approve appropriate millage requests for public safety. It is a small price to pay to protect our families and the men and women who serve us. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any more comments from the public? Okay, seeing none. Comments from township board members? Mr. Clements?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I just wanted to go back to our discussion on the vote tonight for opting out. One of the things that I think was the resounding comments to everybody on this board was the reality of those in our community that rely on medical marijuana. And as everybody stated tonight, none of us have objection to that. One of the things I hope that anyone that's listening that uses or has a need for medical marijuana realizes is there's a number of venues in this community for support. I kept hearing traffic and access as one of the biggest complaints as to why we needed to have this here. And I personally don't buy that as an argument. I think that there are a number of mechanisms and a number of organizations in this community that will help anyone that has a legitimate medical access need for medication. I work with the Senior Center, who is a tremendous group of volunteers who do an amazing amount of work, and in my opinion are somewhat unsung heroes in our community because of the countless things they do. There are a number of churches in this community that I know assist those who are shut in and can't get out to get medications and foods and other whatnot. So I am proud that there are a number of resources available in this community, and I hope anyone that legitimately feels like they don't have access will reach out and do a minimal amount of homework, and I think you'll find that those resources are available. I also wanted to tell Tim Fitzgerald, congratulations on the Veterans Committee. I think the work they've done to date has been very admirable, and I hope and wish the best of luck. I know this board, I think, universally supports and appreciates the dedication of the men and women who've served our armed forces. And to be able to not only talk about supporting them, but to actually be a community that physically puts their money and their actions where their mouth is, I think says a lot about who we are as a community. That's it. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
Mr. Steiner?
I too, again, like Mr. Clements said, thank Mr. Fitzgerald and the committee for the vets. But again, we not only thank them, we thank the men and people that they're also trying to assist, because those are the people that have served and give us the pleasures and the freedoms that we have today. So we'll always put out kudos to all of our veterans. I had just a quick discussion tonight with Mr. Peroni, and I actually had a discussion with the fire chief regarding a fleet card program for fuel. And Mr. Peroni, since I talked to you, information changed. I guess according to Chief Messingell, David Manning has already put something like this forward to apply for the fire department. So if we have not done that to expand to all vehicles done by the township, I would suggest that we enforce that and push forward for all gas that we would buy here. So I'll pass it on to you if you want to pass that on. And then another thing that came up tonight, of course, is millages. I think probably be a good thing that we have a document, whether we put it on the back of our minutes, whether we put it on the website, but have our millages so they're always at the forefront. Because, you know, we have millages and then we go about our daily lives and you just don't think about it. And a lot of people have expressed concerns about when the millages come up and if they all hit me at once and when they renew. So I think if we had simple documentation, again, if we put it on the back of our agendas, maybe, put it on the website, but simple as putting the dates that they would have to be renewed, the dates that we would estimate they would have to be on the ballot. So in other words, if it ends in November, we'd have to say, well, we have to get it on X ballot to be able to collect additional money, or we'd have a big gap if we didn't renew. And then, of course, the amount of what those millages are, whether it's a 0.5, a 1 mil, whatever. I think those three things would help a lot of people understand And then when we do talk about a new millage, people are going to see where that would fall into line. So, again, if we could maybe pass that on to the clerk's department that does the preparation, but don't take that as what I said to do it. I mean, it's open for other board, to suggest maybe some ideas that they have too. Thank you.
Ms. Tinderberry?
I have no comment.
Mr. Frederick?
Mr. Supervisor, I have two items that I'd like to talk to the board about. Number one, the Law Enforcement Committee was dissolved, and there was some question as whether or not they completed their work. Recently, about the last 2.5 months, an ad hoc committee of the board comprised of Mr. Francis, Mr. Peroni, and myself, along with input from several citizens, have been working on trying to sort of finish up the work that we thought they would be doing. We have put together 3 different staffing scenarios and costing them out. Mr. Francis has been gathering a series of questions that we're going to ask the sheriff about the contract that we have with the deputies and also some other issues. After we receive the answers to those questions, we'll be meeting with the sheriff. After we analyze where we are, we'll be coming to the board with a full packet of information so that the board can make some kind of decision or send us back for more work. The second item I wanted to bring up, we all have been reading about the Toledo Area Water Authority, which is essentially the outlying districts working with the city of Toledo to put together a consortium for purposes of being a regional water authority. I have a copy of the 24-page memorandum if anybody wants to look at it. I would start at 11 o'clock at night, and that way it can put you to sleep. But in any event, it's a starting position, and I would advise, I think we all know, that the drain commissioner in his position as the county agency has signed the document on behalf of South County Water, which we're a substantial part. There's a lot of work that needs to go forward by this consortium because they have not yet determined the value of the Toledo system, how it's going to be paid for, who's going to pay what. And I did talk to the drain commissioner and suggested that he might want to come down here and give us a primer on what this document's all about. And so I will work with him and with the supervisor to schedule him in for a short synopsis of what this memorandum of understanding is. There's one or two issues that we'll have to talk to council about somewhere down the road, and that is the consortium is being organized under Ohio statute, and the last time I looked, we're in Michigan. So I'm not sure what our relationship will be other than we have a seat at a table to be part of the information gathering and direction going forward. And so we'll have to see how all that works out. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. That's it.
Okay, Mr. Francis?
I also have 2 items tonight, new items, not to repeat what others have already mentioned. One is just to remind the residents that February 14th is fast approaching. It's not only Valentine's Day, it's also the last day that you can pay your real estate taxes without having a penalty assessed by statute. I just wanted to remind folks to do that. There have been many that have done that. Monday of this week, we received over $1 million in one day toward that. We still have a ways to go, but the time is getting short. Just wanted to remind the folks of that. The second item is a little bit of an update on where we have been and what we've been doing as a road committee. We work at this quite a bit. We have a lot of needs. We've made a lot of progress in the last 3, 4, 5 years on fixing roads in the township that were desperately needed, some of which haven't been touched in over 40 years. We still have some of those to go. There are a lot of them. And we don't have unlimited resources. So we were fishing around, well, when do we want to do these? We came up with the idea a few years back of the 5-year pavement management plan. That's worked very well for us. We've got a draft of a revised plan that forecasts it out from now and for another 5 years. And that recommends that we invest a little over $1 million a year for the next 5 years. Frankly, I don't think we can afford that without some additional funds at some point. We maybe go another year and then we'll be out of the funds, but we can't spend every dollar in our fund balance on that because a lot of that fund balance has been restricted for other uses that we can't touch for general operations. They're restricted. So we do not have an unlimited source of revenue. So we were fishing around, well, how do we do this? And we talked about the idea, well, in the past, the township has bonded projects and pay for them over a number of years. We have 3 or 4 of those out right now. One of them is going to expire, I think, this year, and a couple more in the next few years. So we were saying, well, geez, what projects would we put on that, incorporating the ones that were the most needed, I guess, in the 5-year plan as revised by the township engineers. And the projects that we were thinking about, there's what, 7 or 8 of them, they add up to about $2.5 million. Now, if we were to bond that, say over a 10-year period of time, we could get those all done at once, rather than wait a number of years, because we've been budgeting the normal amount that we've been budgeting the last few years in our general fund for road improvements is $600,000 to $800,000. Now, we've bumped it a little bit in some years using fund balance that we haven't spent in prior years to augment that. We probably will this year. But we don't have an unlimited source. So I did some checking on, well, what would it cost us to bond $2.5 million for 10 years? I used an interest rate, which was just a guesstimate on my part, because those bonds are sold on the market, so we don't know what the rate is until they are sold. And I used 3.5% for 10 years. The total annual payment on that bond would be $297,000 a year. We could pay that out of our $600,000 to $800,000 general fund budget and use the rest for other road projects and maintenance type items. We can make that payment. Sounds great. The bad part of that is over a 10-year period of time, borrowing $2.5 million at 3.5%, there's $470,000 worth of interest that we'd be paying over that 10-year period. That's a lot of money. It's just an alternative way of pushing up some projects to get them done when we're all still alive, rather than several years out before we could finish some of those projects. So I just wanted to give you an update on what we were thinking and maybe ask you to think about, could you support something like that? If not, why, we won't spend any more time in proceeding with that. We're still working on the projects. We'll have to make a selection to recommend to this board on which ones we do when out of our general fund budget. But it won't be a big batch of them. We just can't afford it. Because a lot of these projects are $300,000 or $400,000 a piece.
And
that's a lot of money.
And I told Mr. Francis, there's a lot of work that needs to be done with this in order for it to be on for this year. You know, because when we bond, it's got to be pretty close to the amount we need. We can't be $500,000 off. So there's a lot of work with coring and different things on the road commission's end and the Manikin Smith. We'd need a lot of meetings. So I told Paul, I said, bring this up and let's just get the feeling of the board. Do you want to spend $400,000+ in interest for 10 years to get these roads done now or not? You know, I know Ms. Tinderberry has expressed her opinion that she would not be in favor of bonding, and that's fine. But it was just an option for us to say, hey, we don't know the timeline because we don't know our financial situation every single year of what we can put towards roads. So some of these roads might be 15 years out, 10 years out, the northern roads, because they're big fixes.
And the prices go up every
The
year,
prices,
5% or more, that we have no control over. So if you did them now, you get today's price. If you did them 5 years from now, it's a lot more money. So
And I-
there's a lot involved in that kind of a decision. We're just trying to get your feelings on that concept.
And I did talk to the road commission. I said, if we were to do something like this, to be quite honest with you, it saves you quite a bit of money from going out there and doing cold patch, beating up your equipment over the, 10 years of those roads. Could you partner with us in the 10-year period, maybe 150,000 of the interest, help us out, And the answer was, after he got with his board, they're not interested. So their budget's very tight, they're actually run out of salt and they've got to get more. And so I mean, they have their issues. Would they like us to do it? I'm sure. I'm sure. But like Mr. Francis said, it was just something we'd like to get, and we don't need an answer tonight. But if everybody right now is like not a chance, then we'll stop moving forward with it. But we just wanted to get, we've done some homework on it, not a ton, but we've gotten, I guess when I originally started talking about it, I didn't realize it was that much in interest. So any thoughts? Mr. Fredericks?
I think we would want to see, A, the roads that we're talking about, B, what you would spend on each one, get some kind of an idea of how much we're going to put down on what road and why. But also remember that if we go forward with this, we will be committing, $300 to whatever $1,000 annually against our general fund balance that will go into a reserve pot again. So every time we think about how we're going to go forward, there'll be some more restricted funds. That doesn't mean it isn't a good idea to do this, to get a pile of roads done all at once, and to preload the thing, so to speak, and you pay for it later. I'm not adverse to that at all, other than I'd like to see, A, what roads we're going to do and how much they cost. I think that would help us understand why we're doing Road A rather than Road B or whatever. I mean, the road group can, I'm sure you can come up with something to explain why you've picked this road or why you've done this, that, and the other thing.
I could tell you what roads.
I can tell you, I got the
Oh, go
in
ahead.
front of me.
Go ahead.
I didn't prepare it to hand out, but I've got the roads, and some of them are very good estimates, and others, a couple of them are just best guesstimates. Would you like me to run through those? I can do that easily.
I wanted him to do this for kind of a quick little discussion. It's not to blindside anybody. It's come up to where if we're gonna move forward, we gotta get a lot of stuff done in a short period of time, so.
Let's put it on an agenda item, and that way we can make sure that everybody's prepared, and you have a list of the roads and why. Look, make it an agenda item for the next board.
Well, he's got the list.
I'm
if you want.
saying to you, if you do it as an agenda item, there's going to be a list, there's going to be, some kind of
What's that, Paul?
a projected cost or something. I'm just suggesting you make it an agenda item, and then we can talk about it freely. That's my view. You can do it any way you want, but that's,
No, it's a
How
good.
about I
it's fun.
just read the names of the roads and not the dollars amount, because there's a lot of dollars, at least you know. Crab Road, Stearns to Telegraph, we need to finish that project. We started it, we need to finish that project. Crab Road from Erie to Samaria, Crab Road from Samaria to Roque. Douglas Road from Erie to Samaria, and Douglas Road from Samaria to Roque. Then there's Whiteford Center, and that goes from the Township line to
Toledo.
Township line. One another. We share a part of that with Whiteford Township. Those are the roads that are on the, I guess, the recommended hit list if we were to bond these and do them this year?
Mr. Supervisor, I think the devil's in the details. I know I'm not opposed to looking at a bond issue, but I think the two big questions are, what do we anticipate the future cost savings would be by virtue of the fact that we finish them in 18 months to 24 months as opposed to 10 years from now? So what savings does that mitigate against the interest? What additional contract savings do we gain by virtue of the fact that we're doing them in the aggregate as opposed to one-on-one? And when we finally look at what that real savings is and we can apply that to the interest, only then do we have a really good understanding of whether it's viable or not. But outside of that, I think it's absolutely worth looking at.
Well, I would add one more point, and that is, in 2 or 3 years from now, allegedly, the new taxes that we pay that go to the state with respect to improvement of highways, roads, and bridges and all that, the road commission is supposed to be getting new money. How much and how, I don't know, but for them to simply say, well, we'll think about partnering, I think we need to get maybe a little bit more of a commitment, but I'm not sure how to do that. I hate to bring up something and then not have an answer. But clearly, they're supposed to be getting some new money in view of our new tax on gasoline and on all the other taxes that we're supposed to pay now. That's supposed to go to Act 51. Maybe we can just look at that. I don't have an answer for that, Mr. Supervisor, but I think it's important that we kind of lay a little bit of flesh on them, saying, wait a minute, you're supposed to be getting all this new money. We would like to see, since we are the largest township, we ought to be seeing some of that. I don't know how to do that yet. I'm just suggesting that that's something we need to talk about. Thank you.
Anything else?
Well, I can do that. I'll prepare a schedule and we can put it on the next board meeting? Would that work?
Yeah, sure.
And like I said, this was just simply talked about this week, and we said, you know what, we should just bring it up, and if every board member says not a chance, then we'll kind of stop moving forward. I get it, the details, we need details.
Yeah,
There's no doubt.
and again, it becomes a formal
Yeah.
process.
Mr. Chairman, that's all I have to.
Okay. First of all, I want to thank the Sheriff's Department for doing the ALICE training here at the Township a couple of weeks ago. They did a really good job. We closed Township Hall at 3 o'clock, I think it was, and they came through. They did the ALICE training for all the employees here, I think, except for one that wasn't able to attend. And they did a live scenario where we hid in spots. It actually was fun, but it wouldn't be fun if it really happened. But they gave us a lot of ideas on how to prepare ourselves, which I think is important. I've taken that really seriously here with emergency buttons and just being prepared. I wanted everybody in each department to know what they're going to do. A lot of them didn't have a clue of what they would do. Some of the things were, some of the people, our windows don't open here, which is, I think, is kind of a weird thing in a building, but, that would be an easy out for somebody in an office. So we have hammers and buckets in each office now. And some people might laugh at it, but in a situation, if you could bust that window and get out with a hammer, you're going to be glad it's there. So just, it was really good, and I appreciated them coming out. They did a really good job. I wanted to say with the library, we talk about millages. We don't have a millage anymore with our library. And I think that's been 3 years now, right, Mr. Francis? Right, since well, that money is going to be exhausted this year from the funds that they had. So in doing this job, I've said that's one area where I really want to focus my time to make up some of that difference of the money that's going to have to come out of our general fund to cover the cost. Because I don't think until I really did that, would I ever go for a millage until I've absolutely exhausted every idea that we have. So we've done the LED initiative, and we're saving roughly $1,400 a month right now. We just met with, and we're saving half of our kilowatts. We just got not a quote, but we got an idea from a solar company. I attended a meeting in Whiteford Township on solar, and we ended up getting with Bill Decker Sr., and we met with the solar guy that did the solar panels for his building, and he said the library is basically a perfect setup for a solar grid. We could actually cut our kilowatts in half again. So that would be another big savings, and we could make it a teaching mechanism at the library. So we're continually right now, I actually haven't read the email yet from Jody, but we've met with Jody quite a bit and looking at handling for the different air and heat that goes throughout there, because when you turn the heat on, it goes through the whole building, and there's a lot of areas that aren't used all the time, like meeting rooms and different stuff. So we're looking at controls. We're looking at different ways to save money at the library. So we're going to be getting some bids and looking at different ideas with solar. So that's been going really good. We had received another 36 free LED light bulbs throughout this building from consumers. They swapped them out this week. So I think it's a total of like 42 LED light bulbs. We're getting quotes right now to get the whole building changed out to LED, and the parking lot. There's actually a couple lights out in the parking lot. And what prompted me was Paul came banging on my door telling me to get the parking lot lights fixed. So I said, well, while we're looking at it, we might as well look at LED too.
Is that what you got to do, bang on the door?
Hey,
Oh.
bang, bang, bang. Well, that's just open. He just walked in. So we're looking at doing LED, because you can save a lot of money with LED. We're looking at the solar option here too, but the first thing we do would be the LED initiative. But we did get some free lights throughout here, so. I met with the new school superintendent for about an hour and a half a couple days ago and had a great meeting with him, with Mr. Pryor, and we just talked about, some of the needs in Bedford and just an outlook and a partnership with him. We've worked really well with the last two, with Klein Hands, and we look forward to working with him, because I think this township, we have to work together with everything. We have to understand each other's needs, because everything we do here, is economic development, and we need to work together. So I look forward to working with him in the future and being a part of what he's got going on. A quick little update on our senior center meetings. We've been meeting with Diane from the senior center and our little group that we're looking at different options of different properties throughout the township right now. We're going to be talking to the public coming very soon on what they want. First of all, would you use a senior center if we spent the money to get a new one? The option's still there, and partnering with ProMedica in doing that. So we look to, once we get a plan together, to take that to them and hopefully have a solid partnership. So we have a lot of work to do, and a lot of, I dropped a phone call to Dr. Kojo about the Whitman Center, not taking it over, but actually getting a piece of property to possibly have a partnership there, because that's where you really get your federal grants. That's how Sylvania got their federal grant, was they tied into the Tamo Shanner. So they got $750,000 federal grant because they have access to the Tamo Shanner. Whether they use it or not, I don't know, but that's how you got that federal grant. So we're just weighing our options right now, looking at different pieces of property, and but just wanted to give you a quick update on that. Snow plowing, I put a little memo about kind of what the trigger was. Mr. Clemens wanted to make sure that in doing this, we kind of don't hit the same people first every time. We haven't used our seasonal guys yet. We've used Stoneco. So first, I'm really trying to get solid maps that breaks it down for each guy that's going to be plowing. So if I have 6 guys, which if we get a snow where I could pull the trigger on them, which we have, I've done it with, like I said, done it with Stone Cold twice, but not our seasonal guys. They've been hired for about 3 weeks now. So say we get 8 inches, I want to be able to have 6 guys, to be able to go out and each one of them have a 1/6 and just kind of see how it goes. And then, I mean, it'd be a total work in progress to see how we do with it. So if we get a snow, I'll update you on how it went and some of our, I'm sure I'll get some calls on yards being tore up and stuff like that. But I also wanted to congratulate the newly formed Veterans 501c3 committee. I think it's awesome. When you form a committee and do an initiative, you never know where it's going to end up. You always have good intentions, and I think we all had them. And I think it's gotten to a point where they're doing their own thing, and I'm really excited for them. I look to still support them the same as I always have from the beginning, and continue that great relationship. But I think what we've done tonight is absolutely the right thing to do right now. So, but other than that, if nobody has any further comments, we stand adjourned.